From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, March the 18th, 2024. As fierce fighting continues in Gaza, the IDF announced the death today of 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Matan Vinogradov, who fell in battle with Hamas terrorists early this morning during a counter-terror operation on Gaza City's Shifa hospital. The IDF went into Shifa after it received information indicating the use of the hospital by senior Hamas terrorists to conduct and promote terrorist activity. IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari gave an update last night.
The IDF is conducting a high-precision operation in limited areas of Shifa Hospital, following concrete intelligence that demanded immediate action. We know that senior Hamas terrorists have regrouped inside the Shifa hospital and are using it to command attacks against Israel. Our targeted mission isn't just an operational necessity, it's a global imperative.
The IDF said as troops approached the area of Shifa, Hamas terrorists opened fire at them from within the hospital compound, and intense firefights ensued. Some 20 terrorists were said to have been eliminated by the IDF, including a senior Hamas terrorist who the IDF said served as the head of the Operations Directorate of Hamas's internal security and was hiding in a compound at the Shifa hospital, from which the IDF said he operated and advanced terrorist activity. Hagari also noted that the IDF created pathways for civilians to leave the area, reiterating Israel's war was with Hamas and not the people of Gaza. Caches of weapons and also terrorist funds were confiscated from the scene. The IDF also announced yesterday that a soldier who was thought to have been kidnapped and held as a live hostage in Gaza was killed on October the 7th. The IDF said 22-year-old Captain Daniel Perez was murdered during the Hamas massacre, his body taken captive and still held in Gaza. Talks working towards an agreement with Hamas to see the release of hostages are taking place today in Qatar. Israel's war cabinet last night approved sending its negotiating team, headed by the head of the Mossad, David Barnea, who arrived in Doha today. The families of the American-Israeli hostages held in Gaza released a statement as discussions take place today in Doha, calling, it wrote, on the Biden administration to keep pushing all parties to strike a deal that brings every single hostage home, including the bodies of our loved ones who were murdered. It read, we also demand that the international community put pressure on Hamas, the terrorists responsible for this unholy death and destruction, to lay down their arms and return our family members to us now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke over the phone with President Biden this afternoon amidst apparent tensions in regards to Israel's handling of the war in Gaza. After the 45-minute phone call, Netanyahu said the two talked about the latest developments in the war, including Israel's commitment to achieving all the goals of the war: the elimination of Hamas, the release of all our hostages, and the promise that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel, while providing, the Prime Minister said, the necessary humanitarian aid that helps achieve these goals. Earlier today, Netanyahu met with an AIPAC leadership delegation, briefing them on the fighting in Gaza and responding to recent criticism from Washington regarding the war, including seemingly U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer's speech last week. Netanyahu told AIPAC leaders that the great majority of the Israeli public supports the goals of the war, and that the picture that is presented in the last few days and weeks in the United States, Netanyahu said, is completely different from what I described. The Prime Minister saying the description from Washington is of an outlier Prime Minister who puts some extreme fringe groups, and that's what's driving the policy. Netanyahu said this was deliberately false. Well, this Thursday, March the 21st, which is Ta'anit Esther, the fast day before Purim, a new initiative is calling on the entire world to recite the Shema prayer for the release of the hostages and the safety of the soldiers. A campaign from the Hostages and Missing Families Forum is asking people across the globe to say the Shema prayer at 5:30 Israel time as a mass prayer takes place at the Western Wall, the Kotel in Jerusalem's Old City, in a show of unity. Israel's President Isaac Herzog shared that he will be taking part and urged all to join. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Monday, March the 18th. At 7 o'clock, Mike Burstyn speaks with stand-up comedian Elon Gold, who talks about his personal experiences with antisemitism, being modern Orthodox in show business, and his love of Israel. At 7:30, Eric Goldman speaks with filmmaker Ron Frank about remembering Gene Wilder, his documentary about the legendary comic actor's life, legacy, and battle with Alzheimer's. At 8 o'clock, Abigail Pogrebin speaks with Daphne Lazar Price to discuss her recent trip to Israel. At 8:30, Pogrebin speaks with Abigail Pogrebin about her book, Stories for the Sake of Argument. At 9, it's Jake Ehrenreich on L'chaim. At 10, a replay of Eric Goldman with Ron Frank, and then an encore of this newscast. And coming up next, it's Good Week, Israel. And that's the JBS News Update for Monday, March the 18th, 2024. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.